Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this webcast this morning. Today, we're going to be talking about customer experience for client onboarding. Most businesses and organizations will do some sort of onboarding, be it customer, merchant, trading partners, or even employees. So it's a very common process across different lines of business and different organizations. Before we start, here's a safe harbor statement that I'd like you to read. So the agenda for today, we're going to be looking at some of the business challenges associated with customer onboarding or client onboarding. And then I'm going to show you a typical manual onboarding process and some of the issues associated with it. And then we'll move on to an example client onboarding solution that we have put together as a representation of something we can automate and kind of look at some of the issues that has been resolved in this automated solution. And then we'll finish off with some Q&A. So why do we need customer onboarding, or why do customers do, or organizations and businesses want good customer onboarding strategies? Ultimately, it leads to faster revenues and profits and enhances your brand and reputation. You know, how many times have we had a choice between somebody who we know and can trust will give us a good experience or a good service versus somebody else who might be slightly cheaper, but we might actually go with them or go with the former rather than the latter, purely because we want a decent or a good customer experience. And client onboarding is no different. Some of the challenges associated with onboarding is that most customers now expect a world-class experience. Let me give you an example of Amazon. You know, they have this Prime delivery service where if you order by a certain time, you will get your goods the following morning. And because they are consistently delivering on this, they have a world-class experience and a brand, a reputation to go with this. At home, we also shop with Next Directory, and they have this amazing service where if you order something by 10 p.m. the night before, they'll have your goods delivered in the morning. So these are the kind of services and experiences that most consumers are used to. The other problem that most organizations have is they want to increase customer loyalty and retention. It's very easy now to swap and change between service providers. For example, the new legislation that came in from the banking on the banking side, where you should be able to switch your account from one provider to another provider within 7 days and make it all seamless as possible. So it's very easy to lose customers now to competition. Compliance, again, is a constant thing that most corporate boards have to worry about. Governance is very, very important. KYC check, which is know your customer, and anti-money laundering compliance regulations have to be adhered to. And a lot of organizations now have the pressure where every 6 to 12 months they have to recheck every single customer they have with KYC and AML checks. Ultimately, what customers are looking for, or organizations are looking for, is they want to beat competition when it comes to service provision. So these are some of the challenges associated with customer onboarding. Let's think about your own experience. Imagine if you had filled out an application form for a car loan or a mortgage, and then the company that you applied to rings you up and says, you're going to have to come into the office tomorrow or to their branch to fill out more paperwork. Now, we're not used to doing these kind of things, so that usually leads to a negative experience or a sentiment towards that organization. On the other hand, if you applied for, say, a credit card and it said on the actual web application that if you apply by 3 p.m. we'll have your account open by tomorrow, then chances are we're going to go with something of that sort. Another important thing that customers are looking for is at every stage of their application process, they want to know what the status is. So some application processes, for example, a mortgage application might have various different stages that you have to go through, from the initial application to the underwriter approving. There might be multiple parties involved in that mortgage application from the end user's perspective, and each one of these people might need their credit ratings checked, etc. But customers require constant updates on the status of these applications. We might also want to be able to provide partial account capabilities because the customer has already gone past the credit rating, the KYC and the AML checks, and now it's a case of just working out what are the products or services we can offer them and give them the flexibility and the ability to actually have partial service before the entire process is completed. And again, if these are the kind of experiences that you and I would have had, we will constantly be going back to the same company over and over again. So why is it that a lot of organizations struggle to provide a world-class customer experience? Well, there's different reasons for that. Firstly, it's about people. A lot of organizations and businesses now have outsourced functions. So for example, a high street bank that I was recently working with, they've outsourced their entire KYC and AML check to an offshore, nearshore function. And this particular function that they are using is providing the KYC and AML check for all of their global offices. So the priority is not there, for example, for the UK customers, and it sometimes leads to 3 or 4 weeks before they get responses back. Mergers and acquisitions, lots of customers over the years have merged with other organizations, and now the process is partially split between different people from the existing organization and the new acquired organization. Processes, also a lot of these processes have been around for the last 20 years and they haven't been modernized. There's lots of manual processes in place, there's lack of visibility and insight, there's lack of approvals or inconsistent approvals happening within organizations. So the key thing is, how can you support the entire organization when the tools, techniques and methods differ across different teams? It's just not going to be possible to provide that great customer experience for client onboarding. I was working with a partner recently, and an Oracle partner, and they were working for an end customer which happens to be a hedge fund, and they captured this manual process that this hedge fund was actually performing when they onboarded one of their clients. As you can see from this, there's numerous different people involved in the process. There's lots of manual steps that are taking place. So for example, for the credit checks, they would fill out a form and post it to the third-party provider. Now, even if they, sent this form on a Monday, the chances are it won't arrive for another 2 weeks because you've got to go through the entire manual process because it's not been automated. Again, there's different deadlines that are set. So depending on the type of customer they're onboarding, they've got different SLAs, but a lot of this information is in the minds of knowledge workers or in Excel spreadsheets. So ultimately, what was happening was this particular organization was taking 6 months to onboard a customer. Now, in the Amazon days and the next delivery days, this is not something we will agree that is feasible for the going future. So some of the requirements around customer onboarding, first and foremost, is around reducing cycle times from months to weeks and days. We want instant responses. We apply for a mortgage, we apply for a credit card. We want to know almost straight away whether we've been successful. Nobody wants to wait around. From an organizational perspective, we want to de-risk the customer engagement to meet our KYC, AML, and other compliance and regulatory requirements. We want to provide a proficient and professional, efficient onboarding process. We also want to automate as possible. So, for example, generating the right kind of data depending on the request or the stage of the process. So whether it's a credit agreement or additional documentation, for example, a passport request or a utility bill request. Sanctions and watch list screening is very important. Lots of providers, including Oracle, provide applications off the shelf which will give you the watch list and sanction list screening capability, but the process needs to be able to integrate and interface with this. And then we want visibility and transparency of the onboarding process. Another customer example that I've worked with in the last 6 months provide ATM machines, as well as in the retail shops provide the card machines. So they do something called merchant onboarding. Now, when they're onboarding these merchants, from a merchant's perspective, they want this card device as quickly as possible. So they're constantly ringing up and asking, where's my order? Has it been shipped? et cetera, because they want to start taking credit cards and debit cards as part of their transactions. So you need to be able to provide them with visibility and some transparency of that onboarding process. And then finally, we want to have rules-based policies. So depending on the type of customer, the demographic, we might provide a separate or slightly different onboarding process because the product and service we're offering might be different. So these are just some of the requirements around onboarding. So let's look at it from an Oracle perspective. We have this fantastic modeling tool which will take your manual processes which are spread across different silos, different lines of business, geographically spread as well, and turn them into intelligent processes. We provide a very, very rich capability based on standards. We provide things like rules engine, policy automation, real-time decision integration, content management, etc. It's a very, very easy modeling tool that the business community, together with the business analysts, can model an end-to-end process. And later on, I'll show you an example of a typical process that we can build. Here, this is the BPM process that we saw earlier, which was manual, and now has been converted into a very high-level automated BPM process. So what we can see here is on the left-hand side a number of different swim lanes, and these different swim lanes represent different actors or participants of that process. So at the top we have the client, and then we have a shared services function. So this is basically things on your enterprise service bus that is available to consume across the enterprise. And then we have the actual onboarding process itself, where a request comes in, and then we've got exception management. This is just very simple examples, and normally in a client onboarding process, you would have a lot more, furthermore, swim lanes and a lot more actors, depending on the type of onboarding we're doing. We've got things like exception handling as well. On top of that, we have things like where the knowledge worker will see the kind of activities they're working on a day-to-day basis, and particularly around onboarding, where they need to approve or reject a particular application. We've got integration capabilities, for example, to your backend core banking applications, and then the ability to generate documentation, and we can integrate with pretty much any document generation tool, including the Oracle content management store as well. There's lots of capabilities, and for the purposes of this webcast, I've only took just a very small number. And here we have an example of something called a guided workspace. So imagine you have a call center where you've got a number of people who are working on parts of the process. This particular guided workspace will give them the ability to say how much of that application has been already completed, how long their part of the application process needs to take in terms of SLA, and what's coming in the pipeline in terms of the next stages. So they have a complete view for, in terms of where this application's been, and the audit trail, their particular part of the process, and then what's going to happen next. And the idea behind it is that it's a single UI where the knowledge worker has all the information they need to be able to carry out their function rather than switching from screen to screen, which is quite common nowadays in call centers and these kind of functions. Multi-channel or omni-channel is actually quite key. It's very easy for an individual to start an application on a smart device like a Samsung S4 or an iPhone or even an iPad, and then resurrect that particular application because they have partially completed it on a web channel. And so we need to be able to provide a seamless and consistent experience across all the different channels, which is quite key to customer experience. Again, knowledge management is key. With most onboarding processes, there will be some sort of documentation associated with that. There'll be instant messaging conversations that have taken place internally within the organization, which you want to capture against that particular application. And if you've created a case, for example, against that case, you want to be able to attach emails if there's been conversations that have been had between the end customer and the organization itself. So you've got every single bit of that information captured and then available to the knowledge worker. So when the customer calls in, they have complete view of all the interactions with that end customer. On top of that, supervisors and team leaders, they want to be able to see, if they're hitting their SLAs, how long a process is taking to complete. From a business perspective, we want to see how many applications we are receiving and where they're coming from, the demographics, the values of these applications, so we can make decisions based on this insight and be agile at the same time. So the first of the session was just talking about client onboarding, the reason why customers want to do client onboarding and provide a great customer experience in terms of customer retention, loyalty, and profit. And then I talked about some of the challenges associated with providing a customer experience that people are looking for nowadays. Now I'm going to move you on to a very quick demo where we are showing you certain an experience from a customer's perspective and the different interactions across different channels, and then talk about how Oracle brings additional value to the customer experience process. So in this particular case, we have a fictitious company called Alania. They are a financial services organization and they provide various different products. We also have a fictitious user called John Smith. John is looking for a particular savings account product. So typically, like most users, he will go into Google and he will type in a search request. So he'll type in a query, best savings account. And then once he hits the search button, he'll get a list of results. And one of the results will be from Alamea, which provides this particular product. So what we do is we take the search query itself, in this case, the savings account, and when the customer or John Smith is redirected to the Alamea portal, we make sure we provide the right landing page and directly to the product that this particular person was looking for in terms of their savings account, rather than taking them from a very standard page. And so here what we're doing is John Smith basically is looking for a particular product, and typically, like most people who are on the social platforms, either want to share with their friends, make recommendations, or actually ask for recommendations from their friends and followers. In this case, what's happened is John Smith has gone onto Twitter and put in a tweet to his friends and asking if anybody has any experience with Alameda Financial Services or any other product they can recommend. Now, behind the scenes, Alameda have a social listening tool from Oracle called Oracle Social Relationship Management. And this particular tool is looking or listening from all the different social channels. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, etc., etc. And it's looking for certain keywords to understand sentiment, whether it's positive or negative. So here behind the scenes, what I'm showing you here is an end of a person from Alameda who's listening on the social channels, just trying to understand what people are saying or organizations are saying about Alameda. So we're looking for things like advertising and loyalty and general sentiment and what people are saying about other competitors of ours as well. So not only are we monitoring what people are saying about Alameda, but in this case, we're also looking at what people are saying about Barclays and Standard Chartered, because we want to understand where our competition is basically heading in terms of sentiment analysis. So what happens is we pick up that tweet from John Smith that he's looking for a particular product, and somebody from the bank will now respond to John and provide him with additional information with regards to that particular product that he's looking for. So again, from a customer experience perspective, the first thing we did was we made sure that a landing page on the website correctly took John Smith to the appropriate product page. He wasn't satisfied, so he went onto the social platform and he started tweeting. So we captured that tweet and we responded and made a recommendation to him at the same time. So John is satisfied now, and he clicks on the particular product he's looking for. He starts filling in the details of his application that the Alameda requires, clicks on the usual things like he agrees to the terms and conditions and presses the submit button. Now what's happened at this stage is that the BPM process has now been kicked off. This BPM process is the one that I showed you very quickly, which I'll just take you back to. Which is this one here. So here we can see that the person has actually moved from the application process itself, and now he's moved across these different activities, and now we're waiting on the customer to give us some more information. So what will happen is, once that submit button has been pressed, a notification will be sent to John Smith to say, we've received your application, we now require additional information, can you please upload your passport and utility bill? So John Smith has also been given a username and password. He will log in to the actual Alameda website, and then he will upload his documentation that has been requested as part of this onboarding process. So we have the capability here to take documentation rather than sending it in the post and just upload it directly onto the website. What's happening is the BPM process is now waiting for this. As soon as these documentations have been received, that BPM process will continue on to the next stages of the process. So the next stage of the process is we have a knowledge worker called Jane Austen. Jane Austen's day-to-day function is looking at onboarding of customers for a particular product, in this case the Best Savings account, and she's going to try and resolve any issues, and if there's any documentation that has been requested from customers, she will basically do the 4 or 2 eyeball check and then either approve it or reject it. So now let's take a quick look at what she does. So she logs in to her back office application, and then here she gets a front end or basically a portal page where she's got different widgets. She sees in her inbox that there is a request from John Smith, and it's a passport and utility check. So she clicks on the actual information and she cross-references it with the actual application itself. At this point, she can look at the history and she decides to approve that particular process. Now, what's happened is Jane's completed her part of the process. The next stage is we have a relationship manager, and because the process has identified that this is a high-value customer and a relationship manager needs to be assigned, there's potential opportunities here to cross-sell and upsell. So the process started from John Smith. We requested some information from Jane Austen, then verified that information, and now the relationship manager will see the application from John Smith. Now, typically in his inbox, he might be servicing 30 or 40 different clients. So he can see again from this portal, people from his team, any documentation associated, and in this case, he can see that there's a verify account type for this customer. And the reason for that is because he's a high-value customer, the relationship manager is now going to call John Smith and then capture that conversation in a comment and ask John if he's interested in another type of product. In this case, it's a made-up product of gold, silver, platinum, or bronze. So the conversation is captured here. If there was CTI, telephony integration, we'll be able to capture that conversation and associate it with this particular application itself as well. So we've got every interaction with that customer captured, so anybody wants to go back at any point in time, it's available to them. So John basically receives an email to say we've approved your application. Here's a terms and condition form that we'd like you to sign. This could have been very easily something that we could have done online, where we can just show him the terms and conditions, and then he can sign his name against it. But in this particular scenario, we decided to just upload the document. So what's happened now is John has uploaded the document, he signed the terms and condition, and then the process continued, and the process then generated the documentation, in this case the welcome pack, the account number, integrated with the back-end core banking application, and sent all the relevant information to John. So that's the first, second and third part of the journey, where we have John, Jen Austin, and James Cooper, the relationship manager. Now, at the same time, the business wants to understand, because we want to increase loyalty, we want to increase profits, and we want to make sure that we're providing a world-class service. We want complete visibility of the onboarding process. So here what I've done is I've put together an Endeca information discovery onboarding dashboard, specifically focused around the onboarding process. So here we can see different things that's happening, that we're capturing real time into this process. So we've got things like demographic information, so where these customers are coming from, the number of new clients, the number of people who have reported issues, in this case it's a dollar value. We've got other things like social conversations that are going on that people are talking about, that we're taking from the monitoring service, live conversation chats between, for example, the call center agent and John Smith on the actual website, but also internal conversations. So it's a very, very deep and comprehensive information that the business and the client owners or the business owners of this process can use to determine whether we're being successful in our onboarding process or not. So as you can see, there's dashboards, there's KPIs, there's drill downs. Again, very feature rich, and the idea behind it is simple, is to give the business as much information as possible. So that's the end of our client onboarding process. If I just quickly move back to our process, I'd just like to point out what we saw earlier. So here we see that the process started here. We then sent some documentation for the customer to then respond to, and then we had what we call the real-time decision call out to another application to give the relationship manager what are the products we can cross-sell and upsell, and finally we sent the welcome pack out and integrated with the back-end application. So if I just move this back to where we were, so I've just completed the demo, and any questions might be a good opportunity now to take them. Okay, so we have one question here. Somebody is asking, the manual process that I showed earlier from the Oracle partner, how long did it take for them to implement the automated BPM process? Very good question. In this particular case, actually the hedge fund was a very small outfit. Nevertheless, it took 6 months to actually implement it, train the staff, connect to third parties, do all the training, etc., etc. So from beginning to end, the actual process was 6 months. The build effort was probably no more than 2 months, but then there was lots of other things from documentation, etc., etc. Another question here is around mobile. How would this process interact with mobile device from a mobile application perspective? Again, a very good question, and Oracle provides a very good mobile capability, whereby in this particular scenario, what we would do is we would provide a single interface to that BPM process exposed via the Oracle Service Bus, and then we can provide virtualized services to any consumer, and that could be a mobile device which is calling out to a REST service, which is then calling out to the BPM process. If it's a web channel, it could be a straightforward HTTP SOAP call, for example. Basically, we provide a very rich capability from an integration perspective, so we can provide the omni-channel, multi-channel capability that you're looking for. And because our process provides end-to-end visibility across all of the different interaction points, manual or from people related to applications, the person or the knowledge worker can see every single thing that's going on. Any more questions? So no more questions. Let me have maybe a couple of more seconds. Okay, no more questions. So I'd like to thank everyone today for their time, and I hope it was useful. This particular video will be recorded and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.